Please join me in lighting the chalice. Words are in your order of service. We like this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
For this one moment, know only that you are loved, that you are safe and whole and loved. Know that you belong here. Here among us, here upon this earth in your body. However tired or broken your heart may be, whatever fear, disappointment, anger you carry, for this hour know that you are not alone. Feel the presence of others surrounding you, breathing beside you and with you. Discovering together the way our voices rise and fall together in harmony, in hope. Claim here a resilient freedom. Come, let us worship together. Come, let us be together. Good morning. My name is Charlie Tyler. I'm the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Low Country. Welcome. I hope that you will find here that place of freedom and resilience that might cause you to become and feel more fully human in your presence here. In a few moments, I'm going to give each of you who are new to us, if you're a first or second time visitor and would like to stand and introduce yourself to us, tell us where you're from. In a few moments, you'll have that opportunity. But what I'd like to do right now is draw your attention to a number of announcements that are in your bulletin. You'll see the insert. Do yourselves a favor, take it out, fold it up, put it in your pocket, and read it later, because there's a lot of stuff in here that you're going to want to be a part of. Some of you were here last night at the concert. It was absolutely fabulous. It was a tremendous night and a tremendous time to be together. And you'll see some others at other concerts that are coming up in the future. Please take note of those. I've also been asked to draw attention to the announcement concerning the Sharing Our Stories. The dates and times of that are scheduled for the 12th and the 26th, March 12th and 26th, and April 2, if I have that right. So those of you who are part of that, please take note that you might be able to continue to attend and celebrate together with that. Ann Harrison and I finished our first Path to Belonging class this past Sunday. And we had at least 7, if not more, names that were signed in the book. And I want to call those folks, those names out if I can. And if you're here and are willing to stand, just to acknowledge you in this. Y'all, your gold badges are coming. You haven't got them yet. Some of you are still wearing your paper badges and you're anxious to get your gold badges, but they're on their way and we'll acknowledge you when you get in. But if you would please, Tom and Joanne Brown, if you would stand. Andrea Baker, if you would stand. Steve Clark, Rosemary Staples, and Bethany Renders. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name fairly close to correctly. Thank you for joining. And when your badges come in, we'll call you down front and make sure that you have them there. So that was a sweet time, and we certainly enjoyed being together with you on that. So those of you who are first or second time visitors that are on this half, my right, your left half of the sanctuary, if you're willing to stand and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, that would be very kind. Are there those? Yes, if you would, please.
Jeff, Maxine's brother, and Liz from Calgary, Alberta, a city of 1.2 million people with a Unitarian congregation of 150 people who've adopted the 8th principle.
Yay! Thank you. Welcome. Yes, ma'am. With a big heart. Excellent.
Yes, Rosalind Grossman. I live in Hilton Head.
Well, good to have you here. In the back corner.
Hello, good morning. My name is Joanne Kowalski, and we are from Ithaca, New York, Unitarian Society, Ithaca, and we also adopted the 8th principle.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both for being here. Any more on my right, your left?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm here from Haverhill, Massachusetts, right on the borderline of New Hampshire, and about an hour away from Boston.
Welcome.
We're here with our friend Liz Strasser.
Good to have you here today.
Yeah.
Thank you. And on my left, your right, this half of the sanctuary. Those of you that are first or second time visitors, if you'd stand, and I'll do my best to organize this. To the greens, yes.
Sharon and Gary Green. We were here for the first time last night for music. We now live in Sun City. We're originally from New York, New Jersey.
Welcome. Thank you both. And I'm going to go all the way to the back corner. Back there, yes, if you would, please.
Rich and Leslie Lovegrove, we're here from Bluffton, first time here.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. And in the back row, the 3 of you that are standing, if you would, please.
Ashley, Gwen, and Sam, this is our second time, and we live in Newburgh.
Very good. Thank you very much. And just so you know, Gwen will be speaking to us later in March. Is that right? Yeah, looking forward to hearing what you got to say. Yes, sir.
Jim Nisbach from Green Bay, Wisconsin, home of the Packers.
Welcome. Thank you. And this young couple in the front row, if you would, please.
I'm Robert Thompson. This is Michelle Benson, my wife. We're from St. Paul, Minnesota, and we came for the opportunity to be with our friends Lynn and Gordon, and just as a byproduct to escape the snow. And it's happening on a beautiful concert on Friday night. You know, you just don't know what's going to happen. You come on a vacation and you drop in on something in that. So thank you all for your support of that too. Very nice to be here.
Thank you so much. Those of you who have made your way in here for the first or second time, I'd like for you to know that you have found your way into the most compassionate, merciful group of people that you'll ever sit with for an hour. This is an extraordinary group of folks. This is an extraordinary culture that we have here. And I think that you are going to be experiencing that on a regular basis. So thank you for trusting us with your time and with your hour. Neal, if you would, please.
I had to come and prove that I'm not just a big head on the screen. I'll be a big head in the pulpit as well. I can't tell you how much I was looking forward to coming down the mountain from Asheville to nice, sunny. I understand it's supposed to clear up as soon as I drive off this afternoon. But it doesn't matter. I've had a wonderful time here, and my goodness, that concert Friday night, Matt had to be the most versatile musician I've ever had the privilege of listening to. What a magnificent musician. And of course, we also got to enjoy a pre-concert concert from John Shepherd, as we always do. Charlie, may I engage in self-promotion? May I do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Back in Asheville, there's an organization called the Center for Spiritual Wisdom. And every month, a group gathers on Zoom to have a discussion about some classic movie that you watched ahead of time, if you hadn't already seen it. And so that night, the night we get together on a Thursday night, we discuss the movie. And I always have some theme to do with spirituality. So this coming Thursday night, I've been invited to facilitate a discussion about one of my favorite movies. Do you remember the movie About Schmidt? It came out about 20 years ago. It's a very unusual role for Jack Nicholson. Now, normally he played raunchy, racy, rebellious roles. But Warren Schmidt is a buttoned-up, uptight retiree who's facing a lot of transitions in life. His retirement from a lifetime career as an insurance actuary, his wife passes away, he's estranged from his one and only daughter because she's marrying someone he does not approve of. So he's wrestling with the meaning and purpose of his life. And I know spirituality is one of those subjective words that means something different to every person who uses it, but for me, trying to answer the question of what is the meaning and purpose of my life is a spiritual question. And this movie wrestles with that question. And what I hope to do is, as we discuss the movie, is not only discuss the meaning and purpose of Schmidt's life, but it calls us to examine our own lives to find our answer. And I do believe that answer changes as we go through our life cycle. Anyway, if you're interested in joining the discussion, it's free. Feel free to go to the website for the Center for Spiritual Wisdom. You can sign up. You might even receive an email. I don't know. Maybe, Charlie, I don't know. Between now and then. But feel free to join the discussion. It's always enlightening. Our opening words come from an author who wrote a very popular book years ago. He wrote The Road Less Traveled, you know, of Scott Peck. He had this to say about love. The principal form that the work of love takes is attention. When we love another, we give them our attention. We attend to that person's growth. And when we love ourselves, we attend to our own growth. When we attend to someone, we are caring for that person. The act of attending requires that we make the effort to set aside our existing preoccupations and actively shift our consciousness. Attention is an act of will, of work against the inertia of our own minds. By far, The most common and important way in which we exercise our attention is by listening. Listening well is by necessity, hard work. It is because they do not realize this or because they are not willing to do the work that most people do not listen well. Our opening hymn is a very familiar one. You may not have to look up the words, you probably know it, but if you don't, you can find it on 205, Amazing Grace. Let us stand as we are able and willing.
This is the time we share our joys and concerns. When we share our life this way, we come to know each other better. We increase in empathy, and our sense of community is enhanced. This part of the service is not streamed. We ask you to make no political announcements and no other announcements. So if you wish to make a joy or concern known, come forward, take a stone from the table, share your joy and concern, and then put the stone in the can. The affirmation found in your order of service. In respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, to accept and encourage one another in our free pursuit of truth, meaning, and spiritual growth, we gather in peace and love, to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of all people and all life, to promote justice, equity, and compassion in all aspects of life and living, to respect the right of conscience, and to support the use of the democratic process in pursuit of peace, liberty, and justice for all. This we covenant with each other.
So, today we've got some old news and some new news. The old news, very quickly, is that a few years ago, Unitarian Universalists began suggesting that it was time for our 7 principles to be reviewed and updated. In response to this, a commission was created to study our principles and consider whether or not they should be amended or revised. This group began meeting in 2020 and quickly recognized that there was a need for change. It became clear from the very beginning that our principles needed to be brought up to speed and presented in a way that would better reflect the times that we are living in. So for the past 2 years, this commission, this small group of 6 or 7 people, has been conducting a study of our principles, getting input from UUs all over the country. And last month, they completed the task and they submitted a proposal to the UUA. So, a revision of our principles has been proposed. And that's the old news. Now, Scott, our new techie, is going to put an image up on the screen so that you can all see what is being proposed. And there it is. And for some of you, this will be the new news. For some of you, I know, are already familiar with it. But what you see up here on the screen is an image. It was designed to articulate our principles in the form of a structure, rather than in the form of a list. So you all know currently our principles, and if you're new here today, our principles are the guidelines by which we try to live. They are all spelled out right now in a list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And what is being suggested is a different view. So what you see is a flower with 6 petals. Inside each petal is a single word. Each word represents one of our core values. And in the center of the flower, you see the image of our chalice with the word love. Love is boldly written over the flame. Well, bless you. When the process of updating, I hope you're not allergic to the flower. When the process of updating these principles began, part of the charge that the UUA gave to the commission was this. Oh dear. Bless you again. The UUA said to the commission, this is what they said. They said, as you do your work, root your work in love. Let love be your guide. Attend particularly to the ways that we and our traditions have understood and articulated love, and how we have acted out of love. Remember that the one core theological value that is most widely shared among all Unitarian Universalists is love. And with this charge, the simple image that you are seeing was created. It puts our core values right out there, with love being at the center of our faith. This picture of the flower is quick and simple. And at a quick glance, one can see that we value interdependence equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, justice, and love. But once you go a little deeper, and I'm not going to show this on the screen, but if you begin to go a little deeper into this, you will learn that attached to each one of these values is a sentence. One simple sentence. And when you read these simple sentences, you will see that they are essentially our old principles in more concise language. For example, interdependence. The simple sentence, we honor the interdependent web of all existence. Equity. The sentence, we declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. Transformation, we adapt to the changing world. And if you were to take things a little further, after each simple sentence, you will find very short statements of action. For instance, with interdependence, the action statement is, we covenant to cherish Earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. That is the action statement. And I'll give you one more under transformation. We have the simple sentence of we adapt to the changing world. And then the action is that we covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritage, never complete and never perfect. The other thing that you will find when you have time to sit with all of this is that not only the 8th principle about dismantling racism, but all of our principles, as we have known them, have been wonderfully woven in. So I pride the congregation in Calgary, and I think in Ithaca for adopting that 8th principle. I think you will see, as you look into this, you will find a more concise wording of the 8th principle just woven into this proposal. So let's take this flower of values and put it into our back pockets for now. Let's give ourselves some time to learn more about it and think about it. We're going to have lots of opportunities to talk about it because we're going to keep having those conversations that we've been having about all of this on the 8th day of every month from now until May. But what is important for right now, for today, is that the theme of our services this month is love. And Reverend Neal Jones is here today in person to help us better understand how to love. So as we turn our attention to him in a little bit and what he has to say, let's remember that love is at the center of all the values we share. And that as Unitarian Universalists, we draw from heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage. And all of our heritage is built on the foundation of love. Always remember that love is the power that holds us all together. And that is the message from me.
And now sharing from our abundance. If you have brought food today for the Sandalwood Food Bank, please leave it at the back of the sanctuary as we leave. And in support of the church, we now pass the baskets. Phyllis. Thank you for your generosity. And now Reverend Neal Jones.
Thank you, Skip. For those of you that are new here, I would like for you to know that we have an unusual way of communicating through our speakers. There are 4 of us who rotate in this position up here. Dick Hood, who is with us today. Dick, raise your hand. Dick is a retired minister, but he's not retiring. And he speaks on a monthly basis, myself as well. Reverend Pat Jobe, who will be with us next week, will also be speaking on a monthly basis, actually every other monthly basis, and Dr. Neal Jones, who is with us today. Those of you who are new might not appreciate the fact that we actually have him in the flesh and blood. Usually it's on the screen. Neal also is a practicing psychologist who practices in Asheville, North Carolina, and it's a privilege to have him down here. It is good to know that he continues to practice. He's going to keep practicing until he gets it right. And he also is ordained in the Unitarian Universalist denomination. So it's a privilege to have him here. It's a privilege to call him friend, and it's a privilege to introduce him to you now. Dr. Jones.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, so today I will be talking about love. Now, I sometimes feel squeamish about using that word because it's mushy. And we UUs don't like to be mushy. We prefer to be scientific and academic. Instead of love, we prefer to use words like compassion or unconditional acceptance or radical hospitality. Love is typically associated with romance, with Valentine's Day, and with anniversaries. But this kind of love is passive. You don't have to do anything. It just happens. You fall in love. But when we talk about love as a virtue, we recognize that it's a capacity which you can develop with practice, much like strengthening a muscle with exercise. Now, as a virtue, love is an act of will. You make the conscious choice to extend yourself on behalf of another or yourself. And it's not a choice based on feeling alone. When we choose to love someone, we often choose to care for them even when we may dislike them in the moment. Now, both of my professions, being a therapist and being a minister, have stretched me spiritually by requiring me at times to love others when I don't feel like it. Sometimes when the other person is not very likable. Love as a virtue takes effort. Extending oneself suggests exertion. Loving others is not based on good intentions alone, but on actions. And sometimes it's hard work. As my grandmother used to say, love is as love does. When love is seen as an act of will, involving choice, effort, and sometimes hard work, then Jesus' seemingly bizarre commandment to love your enemies makes sense and is seen as being possible. Because agape has nothing to do with the other person, but everything to do with the kind of person you are. I think you know me well enough by now to know that I take a very practical approach to spirituality. For me, spirituality is living our full potential as human beings in our everyday lives, not just when we're at church or in meditation or on a spiritual retreat. If our spirituality cannot be expressed in common, ordinary ways on common, ordinary days, in common, ordinary places, then I don't see the point of being spiritual. So today, I want to break down this vague, mushy word called love into concrete, practical choices and actions that enable us to cultivate this capacity in our everyday lives. And to do so, I'm going to rely on what the Buddhist psychotherapist David Richo calls the 5 A's. The 5 A's of love: attention, acceptance, appreciation, affection, and allowing. Attention. This first A is what Scott Peck was referring to in our when he described the work of love in our reflective reading. When you love someone, you care enough to give them your attention. You attend to their appearance, their words, their thoughts, their beliefs, their feelings, their moods, their experience. Now, this sounds easy enough, but giving someone your full, undivided attention is really quite difficult. It requires quite a bit of effort because we are easily distracted, not simply by other stimuli like these devices, but by internal stimuli, our own judgments, beliefs, and biases. The fact is, we typically see only what we want to see in our relationships. We can engage in a lot of wishful thinking in our relationships. Parents may not see or hear their children as they really are, but as they wish they were, or hope that they will become, especially if the parents are trying to overcome their own frustrations by living through their children. People who fall in love typically are not falling in love with the person, but with the person of their dreams, an idealized person who will satisfy all the dissatisfactions from childhood. Now, it's hard to be attuned to someone that you've known for a long time. When you've known someone for a long time, it's easy to pigeonhole that person. You may assume that you know all that there is to know about them. But human beings are much too complex to be completely known. Besides that, we don't sit still. We're constantly evolving over time. And if you're not attuned to the other person, you will not notice the changes. These are the couples you see at restaurants, sitting across the table from each other throughout the entire meal in silence. They have nothing to say because they think that there is nothing new to learn. So, the gift of attention requires interest and curiosity about this mysterious and surprising person before you. This is the key to engaging in civil conversations across the political divide which deeply divides our country these days. You may have heard of it. Civil conversations is a movement to overcome this divide. And I wish more of our congregations would consider hosting such an event. When you engage in a civil conversation, you sit across from someone on the other end of the political spectrum. But instead of hurling insults at them or barraging them with your own opinions, as is typically the case these days, you ask lots of questions. You become interested, not only in what they believe, but why they believe it. You become curious about their life story. What happened along the way to shape them into believing and becoming who they are today? You give them your attention so that you can understand them. And when you understand someone, you're more likely to discover common ground. I know when I've engaged in these conversations in my last congregation, I was amazed at how much common ground existed between me and this other person that I thought was so different from me. You discover common ground, and you're also more likely to have compassion for them. When you attend to someone, you're not simply seeing with your eyes or hearing with your ears, but you're seeing and hearing with your heart. You see and hear the needs behind the words and actions. You see the vulnerability behind the bravado, the insecurity behind the bragging, the hurt behind the anger. And if you're not sure of what you're seeing or hearing, you care enough to ask questions. What do you need right now? What do you need from me? The second A, acceptance. When you attend to someone, you notice and hear them. When you accept someone, you embrace that person as being worthy just as they are. You fully approve of them in all their uniqueness. You approve of the path they have chosen, no matter how unusual or different from your own path. You approve of their feelings, no matter how disturbing they may be. You approve of their deficiencies, no matter how irritating they may be. They are who they are. They are perfectly themselves, and that is enough. Like attention, acceptance requires intention and effort because it's not easily granted. All of us have our preconceived ideas, plans, or agendas for the way others are supposed to be, and we often unconsciously withhold our acceptance until they meet our standards. To withhold your acceptance from another can make them feel unacceptable, especially if they're children, still forming their sense of self. When children are not accepted in their full personhood, they can grow up feeling ashamed or inadequate about the parts of themselves that were unacceptable. For example, some parents don't accept their daughter's anger because girls are supposed to be sweet. Or some parents don't accept their son's gentleness because boys are supposed to be tough. These forms of conditional acceptance don't provide a child with solid ground on which to build a solid sense of self-worth. When you give someone the gift of unconditional acceptance, you're giving them the permission and safety to be their authentic selves. And what a gift that is. The third A, appreciation. Appreciation gives depth to acceptance. It says, I admire you. I delight in you. I prize you. I respect you. I acknowledge all your potential. I appreciate you as unique. Now, appreciation requires faith in another person's value. Now, this faith in another can be the sunlight and rain that nourish the seed of potential in that person. Again, especially in a child. Your belief that a child has the potential to accomplish something great or to become something great actually engenders potential in that child. You and I know the power that comes from having someone in your life who believes in you. I think I shared with you before the story of John Ryberg, the minister of the First Baptist Church of Smithfield, who was like a mentor and like a father figure to me. My own father was an old school father. His idea of parenthood was that if he put a roof over your head and food on the table, he had met his obligations as a father, and that was enough. But Reverend Ryberg actually would sit down and engage in conversations with me, especially about religion and politics. I'm sure he's the reason I became a minister eventually. And on occasion he would say to me, Neal, you can do anything you set your mind to. And as I looked into his eyes, I realized he believed it. And in time, I believed it. We know the power of someone believing in you. Now, cherishing a person's unconditional worth without envy or possessiveness means the most when it's expressed, verbally or non-verbally. It can be expressed simply as a word of praise, a wink when someone does something well, a pat on the shoulder when someone excels, or a loving look when someone is just being themselves. Appreciation is the part of love that says, thank you for you. The fourth A, affection. Now, the word affection comes from affect, which means feeling. So affection is the emotional component of love. The feeling of closeness with another, which includes kindliness, thoughtfulness, playfulness, and romantic gestures in romantic relationships, like giving flowers and remembering anniversaries. Affection flows from a genuine liking of someone, which makes this aspect of love the most challenging because people are not always likable. This is why it helps to remember that love is an act of will. It's making a choice and an effort to like someone when they are not likable. Now, as a therapist, it's rare that I have a counseling client that I do not like, but occasionally an unpleasant client does come along, which presents me with a real challenge because I'm being paid to be emotionally present with this other person, and I cannot let my dislike of them stand in the way of my being emotionally available. So what I've discovered over the years is that if I give the other person the other 4 A's of love, if I give them my full attention, my acceptance, my appreciation, my allowing, then I almost always end up feeling affection for them. If you truly understand someone, if you know the full story, it's hard not to feel affection. Now, I want to say a word about compassion, because compassion is a special form of affection. Compassion literally means feeling with, calm with, passion, feeling. Compassion is love that cares enough to feel another's pain with them. Now, compassion presents a real challenge because no one wants to feel pain. Our instinctive response to pain is to run away from it. But again, it helps to remember that love is an act of will. It's making a choice and an effort to feel the pain of another. And when we offer someone who is hurting our compassion, it has a soothing, healing quality, a sure sign of being loved. Now, in order to adequately express affection for another, it's essential to remember that love does not come in a one-size-fits-all. The way I feel loved may not be the same as the way that you feel loved. Therefore, it behooves us to know the love language that speaks to the other person. And it behooves us to let our partner or our friend know our love language, because none of us are mind readers. So I highly recommend to you a book you may have already heard of, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, a minister I knew back in my days in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Chapman observes that each of us feels especially loved in at least one of 5 ways: hearing words of affirmation, having acts of service performed for you, receiving gifts, spending quality time with you, and or physical touch. Once you realize that each of us speaks a particular love language, then you realize the importance that attention plays in loving someone. You have to hear and see how another feels loved in order to adequately express your affection for them. And the 5th A, allowing. This is love's gift of freedom to another, granting someone the room to breathe, the room to be themselves. It's granting the other the permission to know and show their deepest needs, wishes, feelings, and beliefs without judgment or punishment, to make their own choices, even when these are not the choices that you would make. It's letting go. Now, when you grow up in such a supportive, welcoming home, you gain a sense of inner stability. You learn to trust your own experience and feelings as being right for you. Of course, not all of us grew up in such families. In some of our childhood homes, it didn't feel safe to be ourselves. We may have noticed that to be real meant losing the love of those from whom we needed it the most. We may then have become whatever others needed us to be as the price of being loved. Some of us may have developed a well-functioning false self at the expense of knowing and developing a real self. And we may spend a good portion of our lives paying the price, such as feeling like imposters or frauds, such as sacrificing our true selves while trying to appease the needs and wishes of others. Now, the opposite of allowing is controlling. It becomes easier to depersonalize another's attempt to control us when we realize that their controlling nature has more to do with them than us. Most controlling people cannot help themselves. They are not in control of their controlling. They are not insulting us by trying to control us. Rather, they automatically take charge and dominate people and situations because their anxiety is in control of them. They behave this way because of a chilling fear that they cannot handle letting the chips fall where they may. Once you realize this, it becomes easier to have compassion for controlling people while also feeling irritated by them. So the 5 A's of love help us to focus our choices and our actions with particular people in particular situations. But the 5 A's of love are not only a strategy for particular circumstances, but for a purpose for life. The goal of our spiritual growth is to embody a sustained and active presence of unconditional love. And when I say unconditional, I mean that our goal is to become a loving person who makes a choice and an effort to love regardless of the actions of another. We're not letting others control who we are. We make that choice. When we become love, we fulfill our life's calling and our deepest human yearning. Amen.
Dr. Jones, thank you so much for your message. I always feel like I owe you for a counseling session every time you're here. Appreciate your insight. For those of you that are guests here, we have a time after our coffee break to gather back here for what we call talk back. If you don't have to be someplace, I'd encourage you to stay and listen, because that's the best way for you to begin to learn about who we are and to experience who we are. So I'd offer you that invitation if you are able to stay. And the other thing I'd like for you to know is that the Path to Belonging, we will hold another series of classes in another month or so. So keep an eye out for that. Ann and I will be sharing with you what those times will be and the dates for that. We just now finished our first series, so give us a little while to catch our breath, and we'll be back to that in just a moment. For those of you who are here, David and Ellen, again, thank you, John, for your skill and for your heart here in this place. And I look forward to seeing what all we will be doing as we move forward in love. Dr. Jones.
May we be present here and now with unconditional attention, acceptance, appreciation, affection, and allowing. May we let go of judgment, fear, control, and demands. May this be the way we show our love to everyone. May we be ever more open to the love that comes to us. May we feel compassion for those who are afraid of love. And may all persons find this path of love. Amen.
Shall we stand now to extinguish the chalice? While we extinguish this flame,